Happy Sunday morning and welcome to week 2 of the Living Room Sessions with the Peak Church. My name is Nate Fry and this is Robbie Pitt, and we are recording from the Pitt House, and we will be here kind of indefinitely as the situation kind of requires that. So Robbie and I are doing our best to maintain our social distance right now. We each have 3 foot. So anyway, we're maintaining our social distance, but we're glad that you're joining us today. And again, this is what we're going to be doing for the foreseeable future. We're going to record these every week and make sure to have them ready to post on Sunday mornings. So invite you to come and hear some songs and a message from Robbie. This first song we're going to do this morning is a song that talks about a lot of the character of God and how he reaches out to us in times of need. For those of you who watched last week and made it all the way to the end, this is going to be an encore of that one. But for those who didn't make it all the way through last week, it's the first time. So this is a song called This Is Our God. Refuge for the poor, a shelter from the storm. This is our God. He will wipe away your tears and return your wasted years. This is our God. So call upon his name. He is mighty to save. This is our God. Father to the orphan, a healer to the broken. This is our God. And he brings peace to our madness and comfort in our sadness. This is our God. So call upon his name. He is mighty to save. This is our God. This is the one we have waited for. This is the one we have waited for. This is the one we have waited for. Jesus, Lord and Savior. This is our God. For the thirsty, lover for the lonely, this is our God. He brings glory to the humble and crowns for the faithful. This is our God. So call upon his name. He is mighty to save. This is our God. Waited for. This is the one we have waited for. This is the one we have waited for. Jesus, Lord and Savior. This is the one we have waited for. You are the one we have waited for. You are the one we have waited for. Jesus, Lord and Savior. You are our God. Let's pray real quick. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much again for the chance to come and to sing your praises, to recognize who you are, to recognize how you love us, the way that you meet us in the midst of difficult times. And God, I pray as we are all, no matter where we're gathering from today, we are all experiencing change. We're all experiencing uncertainty, in some cases experiencing frustration or real challenges health-wise or financially. God, I pray that you would meet us in those spots, that you'd show us your love, you'd show us your provision, you'd show us your peace. God, I pray for our community, for the Louisville, Superior area, for our neighbors, Lord, that you would again, show them your peace. Show them that you are a God who's in control, that you are not caught off guard by the things that are happening around us. But, Lord, we can find peace and comfort in you. I pray those things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks, Nate. This next tune is I'll Find You There, an old song by The Cry. When I needed love, when I needed peace, when I needed understanding, oh, I found you there. When I needed hope, when I needed strength, when I needed someone who cares, Lord, I found you there. Lord, you make me laugh when I felt like crying. Lord, you make me sing even when my heart was aching. When I needed love, when I needed peace, when I needed understanding, oh, I found you there. When I needed hope, when I needed grace, when I needed one more chance, Lord, I found you there. Oh, you made me laugh when I felt like crying. Lord, you made me sing even when my heart was aching. Aching, yeah. Lord, you let me hide in you when the sky was raging. I know the sun always shines after the rain. I'll find you there. Lord, I know it's true. I'll find you there, 'cause I believe in you. I'll find you there. I'll find you there, oh Lord. I'll find you there. Lord, I know it's true. I'll find you there, 'cause I believe in you. I'll find you there. I'll find you there, oh Lord. I'll find you there. Lord, I know it's true. I'll find you there, 'cause I believe in you. I'll find you there. I'll find you there, oh Lord.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Sunday morning Peak Living Room Sessions. My name's Robbie, and we're gonna about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just a message that I hope will be encouraging. And this morning, I want us to think a little bit more about just the unsettling times that we're living in, the uncertainty, the fear, the troublesome days that we're in. And a lot of questions come to mind. Maybe some of these questions you share, and maybe you have a lot more. But a question in terms of finances. How will I maintain finances? Do I have enough supplies? Do I have enough stuff? What about my job? Will I be able to keep my job? Will I be able to maintain my job? What if I get sick? What if I get the virus? What if someone I love gets the virus? All of us, on a routine basis, are carrying a certain amount of stress, certain amount of anxiety. Life is that way. But to pile on, in a sense, the whole COVID-19 has piled on all of us another layer, and a very heavy layer. And it's concerning. It's certainly dangerous. It's easy to become fearful. And not just fearful, some fear is normal and some fear is healthy, but there's the fear that becomes a little more paralyzing, the kind of fear that becomes debilitating, and fear turns into anxiety, and anxiety turns into panic. Fear can be an extremely strong emotion. Some trouble comes, some uncertainty is on the horizon, some imminent danger, and we're bombarded with messages about that on a regular basis. Worst case scenario, best case scenario. But again, fear is a common experience, and reasonable fear is not wrong at all. However, when it begins to get a grip on us, when it begins to consume our mind, even affect us physically, then it can be debilitating. It can stall us out. It's sort of like getting stuck in the mud and you're spinning your tires, or stuck in the snow and you're spinning your tires, and you're making no progress. What you're doing is sending a lot of mud in the air or a lot of snow in the air, and it can begin to occupy our mind to the point that it takes over. All of our thinking becomes consumed, and it can replace the peace that you sense from God, a peace that has helped you in the past. But when you put enough things on, enough pressure, sometimes it can go beyond that, and it can begin to shape our behavior. It can lead us to do things that are irrational. It can lead us to freak out. It can just numb us in some ways. A couple of verses that over the years, when I've dealt with anxiety, when I've dealt with fear, that have been helpful for me is one verse is Isaiah 41:10, and it's from the Old Testament of the Bible, and it says, "So do not fear, for I am with you." And a second verse from the Psalms, Psalm 56:3. The Psalms were the song book of the Jewish people back before Jesus came, and in the early days of after Jesus came onto the scene. But these were the songs of Israel. And this Psalm 56:3 says, "When I'm afraid, I put my trust in you." I put my trust in God when I'm afraid. These I find helpful, and what I want to do today is in the time that we have is take a close look at a story from the New Testament, a story about Jesus' life. And in this story, we see Jesus, we see his 12 disciples, those that were closest to him. They're going to get in a boat, a fishing boat, and sail from one side of the Sea of Galilee to the other. It's evening, but I want to read the story, and then we'll take a look at it. It says, "That day, when evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, 'Let us go over to the other side.' Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, 'Teacher, don't you care if we drown?' Jesus got up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, 'Quiet, be still.' Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He then said to his disciples, 'Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?' Verse 41 says the disciples were terrified and asked each other, 'Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him.'" Now this morning, we're gonna look at the kind of fear that can paralyze us, the kind of fear that is debilitating. Next week, I want to talk a little bit about how to have peace that's ongoing with the peaks and the valleys of fear and anxiety, uncertainty. But this morning, I want to look at a very specific story and look at how Jesus brought peace, when Jesus brought comfort to a terrified group of his followers. You know, all of us probably have stories of fear or anxiety, situation stories, experiences where a sudden situation would come up where we were afraid, vulnerable, that sinking feeling, the panic, the anxiety, and these stories we remember. Lots of things happen physiologically. Lots of things happen emotionally and mentally. And I want to tell you a couple of stories. One is about 30 years ago, back in 1991. I was newly married. Kim and I were married. We had moved to Denver, Colorado, and we were loving it here. We were enjoying the mountains. We would drive up to Breckenridge. One time we drove up to Pikes Peak, so we hit a 14er in the car. I was running a lot at altitude, and we were really adjusting. So we started thinking that it would be fun. I had heard that there were over 40 or 52 14ers in Colorado, and thought, you know, honey, we could do that. So a couple of our friends came into town, and they decided that they would like to conquer a 14er with us. So here it is, early September. They were newly married. This was before the internet, where you could look up and look up all the things you needed to be aware of to hike a 14er. And again, I had had some backpacking experience, some camping experience. We had hiked and run in Colorado, so I thought this shouldn't be a big deal. We did know my friend Rod and his wife Kelly, who were going to make this trek with us. He said, from what I understand, you've got to get started early. So we got started before daylight. Honestly, I don't think we had water with us. I had a small book bag, a little backpack, and I had a change of clothes in there. I had some tights, running tights, and I had a running top in case it got chilly. It was a beautiful day. It was dark, quiet. The sun began to come up. It began to brighten up the birds. It was idyllic. It was just, this was going to be the best day ever. So here we are. We're beginning to hike up, and started in the dark, and then the sun burst out. We're coming up. We're in the trees. Then we emerge over tree line, and we can see the daunting peak. We're gonna conquer Grays and Torreys. We're thinking, okay, we'll do Grays, and then we're gonna cross the saddle and do Torreys. We'll bag 2 first attempt. This will be a great day. So we get up. We're making good progress. We get up to about 12,500 feet. When Kelly, we decided it was best for her not to continue. She was pregnant. And not that far along, but pregnant. So there was a mining shack, an old dilapidated mining shack that was there. So Kelly goes inside, and we began to move up towards the ascent, and it's getting harder to breathe. The rocks are sliding from under our feet, and we're huffing and puffing, and 10 feet, and then 10 steps, and then take a breath. But we make it up to the top of Grays, and there we are, and we're looking around, and it's just incredible. It's surrealistic. It's almost like looking into the Grand Canyon. We can see the alpine lakes down below, and we're just celebrating. I don't even think we had a camera, but we're up there, and we're observing, and we had heard that you want to get up early to summit early because of the storms that roll in, and they can roll in very quickly. Well, a storm began to roll in, and we quickly began we were quickly frightened, and we're like, okay, we got this. And so we began to make our way down, and we're hiking down, and it's snowing, and then it becomes sleet, then it becomes a driving rain. The clouds have dropped in, and we're trying to make it down to get to the old mining shack where Kelly is, and we can have some shelter from the storm. So we're moving down fast, and we make it down. It's still driving rain. The wind is blowing. You can't see the peak anymore because of the clouds. And we get in there. We're shivering. We're frightened. I'm afraid of hypothermia. Kim is shivering. And so actually her and Kelly had to kind of lay down against each other to keep one another warm. And Rod and I are plotting our course. What do we do? How long are we going to be socked in? And And then it seems like just as fast as it came, it began to lift. The sun came out, the rain stopped, the wind died down, and we were afraid when the storm hit us. But at that point, I looked at Rod looked at me, and I think we were terrified. Just the awe of what we had just experienced, and realized how dangerous, how little we were prepared, and what could have happened, what could have been. So we collected ourselves. We were there for a little bit, dried out a little bit, and then we began to descend back down to our car and headed home. But that moment, those moments were very frightening. And then what was interesting to me, the adrenaline's rushing, hearts beating fast. But as we began to calm down, that's when I think we both at the same time had a sense of even greater terror. Now I want to look at this story with Jesus and his disciples as evening comes. He's been teaching all day. It's been a very busy day. The crowds are large, and he says to his disciples, let's push off. Let's go to the other side. Let's get away from the multitudes. Now, one important point in this story, at least four of the disciples were professional fishermen. They had grown up fishing on the Lake of Galilee, the Sea of Galilee right there. They were very experienced. They had seen storms. They understood the weather patterns. They understood the wind patterns. And they were going to go from the west side, the Jewish side there, Capernaum, which was sort of their base of operations, and they were going to cross over to the Gentile side, the east side of the lake, where it was a non-Jewish area. It's an interesting place, the Sea of Galilee. There's some really high mountains. There's Mount Hermon, that's over 9,000 feet. The lake itself at its longest is 13. Across at its widest, it's 8 miles. However, it's 700 feet below sea level. So you're thinking, well, Mount Hermon doesn't compare to a 14er, but you're starting at 700 feet below sea level. The big mountains, and then on other sides, there are gorges, there are hills and canyons. And what would happen, the warm air from the lake would begin to rise, and the cold air from the mountains would begin to drive down, and it would begin to pick up speed, and you would get huge storms, squalls that would break out, and that would come suddenly. Think about Lake Dillon. If you've ever been up to Lake Dillon, same kind of scenario. Big mountains around it, winds that shift, winds that swirl, storms can come up suddenly, and this is the environment that they began to set out to get to the other side. Now, again, a lot of experience in that fishing boat. They had seen a lot. They had weathered storms. They were confident, self-reliant, and they had a healthy respect for the environment. They had a healthy respect for the sea there. They were fishermen, and that was their life. That was their livelihood. The fishing boat was probably a boat that 14 to 18 people could fit in comfortably with 4 rows and masts and sails. So they began to go across the lake when this furious squall comes suddenly upon them. And it says the waves began to break over the boat and that the water began to fill up and they were nearly swamped. And at that point it became all hands on deck, hands grabbing for the mast, for the sails, trying to maneuver, trying to paddle. Rowing hard and yelling, and it gets loud and water spraying. And if you ever saw the movie A Perfect Storm with George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg, that movie I actually physically felt sick with the pitch forward, the pitch backwards in those seas from that big storm off the New England coast. So the power, the fury, the wind, the frontward, the backwards movement, and they're beginning to get very concerned. They're frightened. These are seasoned fishermen, and they look over and to the back of the boat, and there in the stern is Jesus. Not concerned at all. In fact, he's sleeping. He was exhausted probably, but he's also very serene. So here he is sleeping, and these veteran seasoned fishermen are freaking out, and they begin to call upon Jesus. They began to wake him up, and it says they woke him up and began to scream over the wind, over the spray of the water. Teacher, don't you care? Don't you care if we drown? It's absolute chaos, total panic, fearful for their lives. and they put their hope, this is kind of funny, they put their hope in a carpenter. Professional fishermen put their hope in a carpenter. And I don't know, maybe you've prayed these kind of prayers, these panic, desperation prayers. God, if you're out there, and then it's like, where are you, God? Are you sleeping? Do you care? Do you realize the kind of situation, the circumstances I'm in right now? It says Jesus gets up, and the first thing he does is rebuke the wind and the waves. He says, quiet, be still. The wind died down, and it was completely calm. I'm sure that was an experience that they had never experienced before, because big winds, when gales and squalls blow, even when the wind dies down, it takes the water a while to die down. But the Bible teaches us here in this story that it immediately becomes calm, glassy, and the wind ceases. Then there's complete calm, and my guess is the heart rates are beginning to come back towards normal. The shaking, the shivering is beginning to subside, and the adrenaline is reduced to a trickle, and there they are, and Jesus looks at them and says, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Jesus, when he's talking about do you still not have faith, is talking about it's not just a faith that is mental agreement. Yeah, I think you're all powerful, but it's the kind of faith that would put trust, real practical confidence in Jesus in this situation, in Jesus' power. So he says, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? And then it says they were terrified. And they asked each other, who is this? Even the winds and waves obey him. Now again, they've seen a lot, but they've never seen anything quite like this before. And they know from the songs of the Old Testament, the Psalms, that they've known since they were young. They know of a couple of instances. And my guess is they're probably thinking back, and they realize that only God has this kind of power over the sea. Psalm 89 talks about God silencing the raging sea. And in Psalm 107 talks about how God makes the waves stand still. So there's a lot in this story, but I want to kind of camp out here and just give you a couple of thoughts that I think are very much applicable to our situation. The first is that this story reveals more than just Jesus' power. I mean, clearly, and Jesus didn't do abracadabra, he didn't do some kind of big speech, but it was just peace, be still. And the disciples, the epiphany from that night in the dark, in that big storm, reveals that Jesus is either God's agent or Jesus is God in the flesh. Again, seasoned veteran fishermen on this boat. Now, all of us, again, have stories where we've experienced sudden fear and feel overwhelmed, maybe panic, anxiety, and to the point that we're paralyzed by the fear and the anxiety. A helpful acrostic, maybe something that you can help remember to reflect on, is an acrostic that spells the word out fear. Got this from a friend of mine. And F-E-A-R. And I'm going to go through them super fast and then just make a couple more comments. Fear. F, focus on God's presence. They were overwhelmed in the boat. It was all hands on deck. And maybe someone said, where's Jesus? Did we lose him? And they turn, and there he is asleep. So Jesus' presence was in the boat. E, express concern, honesty. They expressed concern. In fact, they rebuked Jesus. Do you care if we drowned? And then A would be ask for God's help. Focus on God's presence, express your concern, speak honestly to God, and then ask him for his help. And then the R is responsible response. Take action. Move forward with Jesus' perspective. Jesus said, peace, be still. Jesus is over the storm. Jesus is over the circumstances and over the fears. Jesus is not alarmed by the COVID-19. Jesus has a perspective. Trust God and move forward. What needs to be done, and then begin to do what needs to be done. And again, that's listening to experts. That's listening to authorities. That's being reasonable and doing things that make sense. Again, these are fearful days we're in. Troublesome days, concerning days, even dangerous. This is a dangerous virus, a dangerous pandemic. But God promises, and we see it in this story very clearly, to never leave us, to not leave us without him, even though sometimes, or for us, we can't visibly see him. They were able to look back and see Jesus in the stern, but we can't see him, and there are times that we can't imagine that he's even near us. We don't feel him. There's just nothing about the situation. We feel alone, and we feel very vulnerable and feel like that it's all sinking. Questions about finances, about supplies, about job, about if I get sick, if I get the virus, if someone that I love gets the virus, can lead to paralysis, can lead to anxiety and panic. And I want us to think about these things, to focus on God's presence, to express honestly our concerns to him, to ask him for help, and then responsibly begin to move forward. And next week, again, we're going to talk about how to have peace on an ongoing, just look at some of the scriptures that help us understand how we can have ongoing peace, because there's peaks and valleys, and help us maintain our equilibrium during tough and frightening and scary times. I want to lead us in a prayer. If you have any questions, maybe about the story, maybe just questions about, maybe you've never experienced God's peace, maybe you've never sensed his presence, and maybe you're wondering about that. How can I know that God really is there and that God really wouldn't leave me? You can reach me at robbie@thepeaklouisville.com. You can go onto our contact page at www.thepeaklouisville.com, and we'll get back to you. Nate will get back to you. I'll get back to you. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm going to end us with a prayer, and then we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much that you make promises to your children. You promise to be there. You promise to never leave. You promise to never forsake. In the most significant storms in our life, you're there. And you want to give us peace. You want us to not fear in the way that paralyzes us and locks us up and gives us anxiety and panic. But you offer peace that in the middle of the storm, you'll give us refuge. You'll give us shelter in the storm. I pray for those that are watching, those that have tuned in, and then those at our community at large, and just draw the concentric circles out, that we would experience your peace, that we would experience your comfort in these times, that we would put our trust in you, and that you would see us through this time, that the waves would calm, the wind would still. And whether this is a long period of time or a shorter period of time, that as a result, we would learn a couple of things about you, about your power, and that you are greater than the storms, and you control the storms. And that our trust and our faith, not just in our mind, but in our heart and in our ability to continue to move forward would be expanded. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
All right, 2, 3, 4.
Nothing can separate. Even if I ran away, Your love never fails. I know I still make mistakes, but you have new mercies for me every day. Your love never fails. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. The wind is strong and the water's deep, but I'm not alone here on these open seas, 'cause your love never fails. Chasm was far too wide. I never thought I'd reach the other side, 'cause your love never fails. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. You make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. Your love never fails. All right, well, thanks for joining us for the Peak Living Room Sessions. We'll be back here again next week, and you can check out replays on thepeaklouisville.com. We'll see you next time.